Now we are recording. All right.
Okay.
See, you just jump right back in.
Okay.
Hold on, do I have to start over?
Yes.
Yep. So we always hear about tithing in the church, and most of it always revolves around obedience and areas where we are called to tithe because God commanded it, and it's our obedience to Him. But it's also an area where we expect this return. You reap what you sow. But one of the areas of tithing that I've kind of lingered on really in my life is how we as the body are truly supposed to take care of one another. And a lot of what you read through the New Testament talks about how we should be unified as a body through Ephesians and through Hebrews and different areas where it talks about bringing in the tithes to take care of those who are working, the saints who are doing the calling. And so he talks about in Malachi how we should bring our tithes into the storehouse. And if you look at the storehouse, what the storehouse was, people would go into the storehouse and get what they needed. And so today we have a culture of people who are pushing for whatever agendas, and this is not a political thing, but if the church were truly doing what it is that we're called to do and bringing that together and really taking care of one another, I feel like that's an area where we've really missed as the body. Taking care of one another. I feel that the heart of the Father is that we are unified as a body, but not just in our beliefs, but in our actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't you feel like, as you're talking, I'm just kind of thinking, don't you feel like the American church particularly is kind of missing this? That we're putting all of our tithes into, sure, we're giving outside of our walls some,
right?
But we're also putting a lot of it into our own agendas and programs and stuff, and I feel like some of it's good and fruitful, and some of it I feel like could be missing the heart of God. If you think of it in terms of the New Testament picture, that just kind of what you said sparked.
Yeah, American
that kind of imagery.
American culture has become a culture, not just America, but church in America has become a culture where we're very sectored off. Whether it be through denominations or whether it be the Bible Belt versus going to the Northeast, going to the West Coast, it's very culturally divided to where we feel like we're doing this on our own. We're not really relying on each other, and I really feel like we missed the heart of what Jesus said that we are, and that is a body.
Yeah.
And He's the head of that. And so, how do we honor the head of what we belong to? And I don't believe for one second that He chose to, spend so much time in the Old Testament, and there's even scripture in the New Testament that people don't point out. But I don't believe that His heart was missed on that. And so, I don't know. I find it hard for me as a Christian in America to not feel this burning desire to really take care of what's in front of us.
Yeah.
I think the tithing just comes to me naturally like just the first fruits. So I don't look at it just as I have to give my 10% money wise, but the first fruits of my time. So when you, what are you investing in? Are you investing in Him first, or are you starting to look at your phone? Right? It's the first thing you do when you wake up, and you go look at an email, and you go look at a text.
That's good.
Or you go, or do you
fall into that?
Or do you turn on the TV? Right?
That's good.
So what are you doing the very first thing when you wake up and the last thing you go into bed? So what's in your mind when you wake up? What's fresh? What's giving you that thought for the day versus trying to turn to the distractions that you're going to be all through the day. So starting your day out in His presence, I have found in my personal walk, I've increased that, and I've seen it already impact. And if you look at just tithing in general, the way I kind of think about it is, so if you go punch your clock in and you show up on time, right? Well, that's like tithing, right? You said you showed up on time and you did what you're supposed to do at your job. But you don't just show up on time and that's it, right? There's other things that go along, right? And that's part of tithing and then the giving. So if you just showed up on time at work and nothing happens the rest of the day, well, you're going to get fired, right? So what? And I'm just using that as an analogy. So if you just give your tithe and 10%, well, I did what I was supposed to. I gave my 10% and I'm done. Well, that's not the way it works. That's not what He wants relationship with you. So you have to think about the first fruits of not only your time with Him, but also like what are you also giving, not just financially, but also of yourself in relationship. And so I think a lot of times everybody just thinks about it as money because that's more of a discipline type thing that people can grab hold. But it's more of a concept that He's trying to grow you relationally. He is after your heart. And so if He's after your heart, why wouldn't you want to pursue that the soonest thing you wake up and as soon as you go to bed? So I look at it. I look at tithing in a different way. And you know, everybody says you shouldn't think about it. It's like breathing. You should honor it and everything. And I totally agree with it and totally get it. So I look at it a couple of different ways.
When I hear your analogy, like what I like about that analogy is like it's kind of conveying a mentality of like doing as little as you can to meet a requirement. And Alan, you mentioned how there's some New Testament passages that never get talked about or they're overlooked a lot. You hear a lot of people say, well, tithing is never mentioned in the New Testament, when in fact it is. And one passage that comes to my mind is in Luke chapter 11, and it's in a passage centering around verse 42. I mean, the passage starts earlier than that and goes beyond that, but you know, Jesus is talking to the Pharisees in this passage, and He's saying, you know, you're giving a tenth of your this and your that, but you've neglected justice and the love of God. And you should have done the latter without neglecting the former.
Yeah.
So yeah, do these things, but this should be from a place of justice and love of God. So like when you give that analogy of just punching the clock, I mean, I think a lot of people have come to have that kind of mentality of like, well, here's my 10%. Like some people who are even tithing, they're doing it, you know, grudgingly and scraping by as little as I can. Is this enough, God? And kind of feeling like they're doing Him a favor when really, if you catch the heart of Luke 11, like we're inviting the God of the universe into our finances. It's the least we can do. It's an act of worship, and if it comes from a place of love, you know, we're not checking something off or meeting a requirement. It's an honor to do it. You know, it brings such life.
And I think sometimes it does start, I mean always, it does start as a discipline.
Sure.
Like it's not all, you're not just, if you're not a tither, you're not going to wake up tomorrow 9 times out of 10 and I'm going to start being disciplined in this and tithing. No, it takes discipline and it takes work and it takes, you know, this is something that we as a family are going to commit to do. And I think if you didn't grow up in a family that consistently tithed, it's a foreign concept sometimes.
Sure.
And it seems, you know, weird. And well, what if that church doesn't do the right thing with my money? And I think so many people.
That's a big one.
It's a big one. So many people fall under the, well, I'm supposed to be a good steward of my money, and I'm supposed to tithe, but you know, what if I give it to the church? Well, I think they're getting paid too much, or I think this is going on. They're spending too much money on this program. And I think we have to just step out of that and trust that where we're tithing is...
This is unto the Lord.
It's unto the Lord.
It's not unto an organization.
Exactly. And He is in control of it all. And He, you know, He doesn't judge us by what somebody else does with our tithe.
Right.
And it reminds me of people who, you know, I've been guilty of this. See someone on the side of the street with a sign that's asking for money. I don't want to give to them because they're probably going to go buy alcohol and cigarettes with it. Well, truthfully, if I really am living out the life that I say I am, that's not what should be at the forefront of my mind.
Right.
The forefront of my mind should be built on mercy and love.
Right.
That
Rather
person,
than analyzing how they're going to mishandle
absolutely.
it. Absolutely.
And yes, they may well go do that, but that's not where our heart is not supposed to be focused on what the bad parts of them are.
Right.
Our heart should be focused on, hey, this person is down and out. I need to do something to love on them. And it doesn't have to be money. You can take them to get food or something. But it's just about the heart, and we have to check the heart.
Yeah. And not even focusing on the human element, but like seeing everything we do is unto the Lord. If you look at it that way, then you're free. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have to analyze, how much are the salaries of the church staff
Right.
and all this and that. Goodness gracious. I mean, a lot of that is rooted in, are you planted in the right place? If
Right.
you are, goodness,
Yeah.
just trust God with it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of that analyzing that goes on that
Mhm.
prevents a lot of people from stepping out in this area of obedience
Mhm.
and then causes them to miss tremendous blessing.
Well, and speaking on the tremendous blessing, when we tithe, we open the floodgates of heaven over our lives. We're
Mhm.
being obedient to something that God has clearly laid out in scriptures. You don't it's not if you tithe, it's when you tithe. I mean,
Mhm.
it's something that we are required to do, and when you have the right heart about it, it is a joyful process. But I know it's very easy when, say, you're in debt, or you've got a lot of bills, or you're not making as much money as you would like to make, or maybe you're out of a job, and maybe you're in a one spouse income home, whatever it may be. You can always look and say, well, when we get to here, we're going to start tithing because we'll be
Right.
able to at that point.
Right. We can afford
We
it
can
then.
afford to then. But in reality, you can't afford not to tithe, even when,
Absolutely.
especially when you're trying to get out of debt.
Yeah.
Because that's going to open the floodgates. And
It's the only time he tells us to test it.
And
yeah.
it's connecting you to the supernatural
Yeah.
resources of heaven, and God's resources are endless.
Yes.
And it is a step of faith because it doesn't make logical sense to think that with 90% of your income, your
We'll go
needs
farther.
will be met and you're going to be more blessed.
Yeah.
Logically, that doesn't make sense. But what is the whole gospel about? It's a life of faith, and
Right.
so we're
And
not.
it's a life of giving.
Yeah,
I mean, Jesus
extreme
gave his
generosity.
life.
Yeah.
And I think too, back to what you said, I mean, it's people so many times get wrapped up in where they're at.
Mhm.
But truthfully, for being honest about it, it's all about perception, right? So everything that we have in our lives, whether or not, it's all about who we view it as. Whose is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of
Right.
times we get to this, closed arm, closed fist mentality.
It's mine.
It's all mine.
Yeah.
It's all mine. And yes, I may have put forth some physical exertion or mental exertion that was able to afford these things, but truthfully, where do those blessings come from?
Yeah.
And until we get to a place to where we recognize that, hey, I'm not worthy of these things, the Lord has blessed me in that.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think we truly get to the point where we can actually have a heart that is bent on giving unto the Lord.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, like what Anna was saying about abundance, if you stop giving, or you're not doing it constantly, like it's something that you're always doing, same as praying, right?
Yeah.
If you just pray every now and then, where's your relationship really going to be?
Mhm.
Same thing with tithe. I mean,
Mhm.
the concepts are all the same as what he's teaching us is
Mhm.
all the same.
Right.
Well, it's like there's a culture that can be created of
Right.
generosity
I mean,
in your own heart.
since I'm on this analogy kick, I mean, think about it. think about a manly man like Alan here, and let's say that he doesn't work out for 2 years straight, and all of a sudden somebody asks him to go be in
Do an Ironman
do
or
a
something.
triathlon. Well, how's it gonna work for him? But let's say that he
Struggle
is.
will be real.
Let's say that he is working out hard and going strong, and all of a sudden he does get a speed bump, and he eats one of these lovely cookies that Haley was supposed to have already cooked for us, and I hadn't had my dessert yet, so this video might last a little shorter than normal. He's not gonna have that bump in the road, right? Because
Right.
he's been diligent
Yeah,
and he's
right.
been confident in doing
Right.
that. So
That's good.
he can have that, and he can be diligent about it. So it's like, and everybody says the saying, you can't outgive God, and you can't. And Haley, in our
You
lives,
can't.
You cannot.
we've experienced it in our marriage.
Oh my
To where,
goodness.
I mean, especially early on in our lives. I mean, I wouldn't say that we were house poor per se, but we weren't really given. We couldn't really put a bunch of money back, and
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we were.
we were very limited.
we were very
in the extra,
limited,
like the wiggle room
but
we had.
I'm telling you what, every single time, either a tire blown or
These
something
unexpected.
unexpected came up,
Yeah.
the Lord always provided, and I think that's just staying in the faithfulness
Yeah.
of what is like Alan, going to get some cookies that Haley should have already had for us, right? But it's just the fact of staying, like you said, staying in that
Yeah.
obedience. I mean, that's what He wants. He wants that obedience.
It prepares you for the fires.
Exactly.
It does, and it's so important, like staying in that obedience. Just thinking about like anybody who's watching this that has young children, like starting that early. Because I remember my parents, us getting our allowance and them helping us take out the $1 that was 10%, and me physically putting it in the and like that means something. I know it seems silly, but it really means something, and it establishes that discipline in your children at an early age to where even if they fall away from it at some point, that foundation was laid.
I remember that too. I remember with the little envelopes. One was yellow, one was pink, one was blue. It was for each Sunday.
Yeah.
Mom would tell me to put it in there, and it's ingrained to me. Like, all right, hey, let's get the yellow, green, and pink, and blue.
Yeah.
And
those seeds last.
Yes, they sow that.
Even if a child wanders for a while.
Yeah, and I know.
And what you said earlier too, like about Alan with the triathlon thing, like I keep thinking about how it's an exercise in faith, and faith is like a muscle.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you've been established in that place of the 10% obedience, Alan and I were just talking about this before we started shooting, like how in the New Testament everything goes to a whole new level in Christ, and that should be our floor, and it's not at all from a place of legalism. It's out of His extreme generosity and who He is and what we have access to in Him. That it's limitless. So I don't want to be here, God, is this enough? Here's my 10%. Like I think of Mark Batterson's book, The Circle Maker, and he has such a value for extreme generosity and how he wants to actually flip the tithing thing where they're giving 90% and only keeping 10. And I think that is an incredible vision, and it has really challenged us to think bigger. That we've been given so much, and what a blessing would that be to be able to, keep growing in our giving, and not just here, we've met this quota, but as every year passes, we're growing in this muscle, like just like faith, this muscle of giving, and that it's growing stronger and it's getting bigger, and we're looking for opportunities to bless others. It's just a totally different mentality from barely get by and punch a clock to.
Right, it goes back to what I was saying. If you just show up to work and you show up on time and that's all you do, and then you try to leave, well, you're not going to be a good employee. It's the same concept. You have to fully give, and that's what the Lord wants. He wants somebody that's going to be obedient and servant.
And it always goes back to the
after
heart.
Their heart. Yeah, like David, after like the heart. So that's
always goes back to the heart.
I think a lot of that too, our obedience in that gets us prepared, because talk about triathlon or whatever, but as you're going through something like that, there are points where you want to give up.
Yes.
But the training, and you run into situations where the roof needs fixed, or you need a new car or something like that, and those are just hurdles that life puts in front of us. But when we get into that obedience and that training and obedience, the Bible says that discipline is painful for a while, but it then yields the fruit of righteousness.
Yeah. Or the oven goes out and you can't cook my cookies.
Yeah,
something like that.
It always comes back to the cookies.
It does come back to the
cookies. We
cookies.
could try a microwave.
We could try the microwave. The microwave's out too.
Something I did think about before we started talking was like, I know that you both have had this conversation of, because it's just come to our attention, I guess, just becoming adults, and this has probably been the case like our whole lives, but we're getting to a point now we're involved in organizations and whatnot, and realizing that even a lot of Christian organizations really aren't operating from the basis of the tithe, which for me is this, like, I guess, naive, I've been doing this my whole life, and of course every church and Christian organization is tithing. That was kind of like news to me, and I didn't know if you guys had anything you wanted to offer in that regard of where you land as far as that.
I view them separately.
Okay.
I do. I view, so the church, I believe that, the tithe itself is not something I think that the church delves out. I think that everything that comes into the church in some fashion is going out.
Yeah.
It's going out, whether it be to supply those who are ministering to the needs of the people, going to the missions, going to community, whatever it is. I don't view that there's one single tithe bucket. I think it's all tithe bucket. Now, when you talk about like
That is a great point.
whenever you talk about Christian organizations, I think that a lot of the heart, especially around nonprofits, a lot of the heart is, well, you know, we don't have enough coming in, we really can't afford to. And like you said, you can't afford not to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so getting to a place to where you